Welcome. We are going to be talking about centralizing operations in multi-cloud environments. And for the purpose of this talk, we would like to start with the definition of multi-cloud that we use at AWS. We define operating in multi-cloud as running significant workloads in more than one cloud environment. Okay, we know that there's people who define it as including SaaS applications. We don't. We focus on workloads. So for what we're going to be talking about today, as I mentioned, is operating in a multi-cloud environment. So since I can't see you, let's start with speak up if your company currently operates in a multi-cloud environment. Can I hear a yeah? All right.
Exciting.
Very. That means they're in the right room.
That's right.
Those of you that don't and have no interest in operating in a multi-cloud environment, would you like to speak up or just leave?
I don't see anybody leaving. That's a good sign.
Well, we couldn't see anyway, so you can do that. We wouldn't know. All right, so let's kick off. We will cover today how to navigate the extra cost and complexity of operating in a multi-cloud environment. We have a very rather packed agenda. We're going to start with introducing you to a company called Octank. That is a mock company that we invented for the purpose of our presentation today. We'll talk about their use cases. I think some of them will resonate with you. They're pretty common, and we hear them a lot. Rich and I support multi-cloud customers on a day-to-day basis, and these use cases that we share with you just come from that experience of hearing that from our customers. We will show you how we help customers with multi-cloud operations and observability. And we'll show you the results of our mock company, which actually represent results of actual customers that we can't name. And we'll also then share with you real customer results from actual customers that provided us the permission to use their information. And then if you manage to survive us through to the end, you'll also get some resources and information you can implement right away when you get back to your day jobs. So let's go from there.
Awesome sauce. All right, just to reiterate, our goal for today, this is really all about you. And we're not interested in science projects. We're not interested in showing you anything impractical. Everything that we're going to show you here, you can walk out of this room today, or maybe even in the room, and use immediately. And this is all based on practices that our customers are using today, and we're going to dig into it.
And Rich will also show you live demos that if this year, like cross your fingers, they don't go sideways, because live demos are right.
It never happens.
No, I'm not going to remind us of a year, but never mind. Okay, Octank. So let's talk about Octank. Large enterprise has its tentacles in many different businesses we'll talk about. Some use cases we'll be discussing that Octank is solving for our M&As. So think about a company that's operating on a primary cloud and then end up purchasing a company that's on another cloud and having to make some decisions if we're migrating these workloads or not. Regulatory requirements, again, common use case that we hear quite a bit. Sometimes they're actual regulatory requirements, sometimes they're perceived, sometimes they're something that customers are anticipating will come about and how to prepare for them. So we're going to use Octank as the model for this. And the idea is that you can think of Octank as Contasso, Northwind, Acme, very, very large enterprise with the same problems that large enterprises deal with. They have, let's imagine, some white label sites, e-commerce operations, retail operations, and throw in delivery? Yeah, like scooters with the boxes on the back, those guys that always drive backwards on one-way streets, that's us, all right? So now we're at Octank, and yeah, let's go from there and see what they're trying to solve for.
Awesome. And by the way, this guy's name is Octi. I wasn't feeling very creative when I named him, which is actually why I didn't make him myself or name him. That's what I used a model for. It made making this presentation actually a lot simpler. Don't worry, this is not an all-up generative AI session, though. This is really focused on operations management.
And Rich wanted me to use the word cephalopod for the entire session rather than octi or octopus. And I'm like, no, I'm not, no, that's octi the octopus. We're not going to call him those big, long words.
Cephalopod is a good word. All right.
Fine.
So for today, I am the CTO of Octank, and I am obviously a person that is very excited about technology. I love technology, and frankly, I'm always trying to automate myself and my team out of jobs, and I never succeed because we always end up working on more and more interesting problems after we solve the more simple ones. And then we have Ellie.
I'm going to represent the business. I care about money and shareholder value and ROI and you not spending all this money you spend on your science projects and geek things.
That is so boring. Oh my God.
So we don't always see eye to eye, that's for sure. And what we're seeing is that AWS, yes, being a tech company, we seem to think that AWS only focuses on the tech side of things, but that's not actually the case. At AWS, we get a lot of best practices, strategic guidance. AWS helps Rich and I, the tech side and the business side, make magic by combining these really two parts.
And I generally think that she just doesn't really get it. Like, it costs money to keep the lights on, it's hard, and you know what? You got to pony up some cash every now and then.
Very little cash.
Just a little bit.
Okay. So, where do we go from here?
Let's actually move really quickly through this, and we're going to say you are all now employees of Octank. So, yay! Congratulations. Fantastic. We're very happy to have you here with us. I would just like to say this is awesome. Look at all of these new employees, and you're going to build so much cool stuff for us. It's
All right, wait. New employees. Speak up if you're like Rich, if you're a builder, techie, that's what you care about. Let me hear you.
all right.
All right, now, much louder if you're a buyer and you care about the business and strategy, and who are my folks here? Oh, come on. Clearly.
Thank you. Awesome. Oh, and Octi, you put your hands down there. You don't count, okay? He sneaks everywhere. He's got his tentacles and
We
everything.
put up 2 out of the 8. Okay, we'll allow it. All right. So Octank merged with Northwind. And Northwind operate on another cloud. And we made the decision, after a lot of thinking, not to migrate the workloads from that other cloud into AWS. And there were a lot of good reasons for that. That company, Northwind, had customer agreements, contracts that required it to continue operating on the cloud it was. They were also using quite a few native services, and it really didn't make sense to re-architect everything and migrate, not to mention losing people's skills, their expertise, and then having to retrain everybody. And does this sound familiar to anyone? Has anybody in their company dealt with similar situations? Nope, never, right?
Just like every day for like a lot of you, I imagine. Yeah, we get it.
We should have brought baseball caps.
I know. This is crazy. So these are the reasons why we need multi-cloud management. Frankly, we have raced into the cloud as fast as we can, and we've closed our data centers permanently. We don't want them back. We don't want to be in the real estate business. It's not a good scene for us. But we do find that switching tools and operating this diverse landscape is problematic. And frankly, what we have found is sometimes our objectives, particularly our security objectives, can be put at risk through the lag time and the context switch from going to one tool and one operations team to another. So we need to streamline and we need to simplify.
And as Rich continues to build very cool things, that obviously on the business side is something that we want, right? Generates more revenue, brings more customers. So we definitely need help, marriage counselor.
Definitely. Need couples counseling for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk for a little bit about how AWS helps in this regard, and then we're going to step back into the Octank world for a moment. This is a little bit of a quick summary of some of the key releases that AWS has put out since 2016 that are multi-cloud or hybrid enabling features. If we start at the beginning in 2016, systems managers, it's more like 18 different services. There's a lot going on in there. We're going to show some of that today. We don't have like a whole week to go through it all, unfortunately. But as you can see, there has been a continual progression of releases over time. AWS does want to meet customers where they are, and sometimes that does mean in other clouds. Now, as we progress closer and closer to now, you're going to see more services that actually belong to other providers. They're actually highlighted in another color. There are more features today than there were 1, 2, or 3 years ago that interact directly with another cloud provider's platform or services. So while much of what we do today is going to be agent-based, just know that it doesn't stop with that. And I know 2024 is not on here. I know clean rooms with multi-cloud support, it's not on here. I apologize. I had to produce these slides like 2 months ago, and it's just the way the cookie crumbles.
I don't think you're the only one that wants to ignore 2024.
That might be true as well. So let's talk about how we're going to be using AWS services from the tech perspective here. There's 2 lenses we're going to be talking about. First is from the operations management, patching, remote access, et cetera, execution of scripts across other machines, wherever they reside, and then we're going to dive into observability. But first, a little bit of groundwork. There are 2 ways that we're going to be talking about accessing AWS from inside of another environment. This is the first option. So, as mentioned, the systems manager path. With this approach, your other cloud or your on-prem environment installs the systems manager agent. The agent effectively acts as a credential broker, and it caches locally on the file system tokens that last for 30 minutes that are mapped to an IAM role. So you can fetch those tokens off the local file system. Please be mindful of permissions, obviously. And you can use that to access whatever services you have granted for that particular role. So S3, SageMaker, Bedrock, OpenSearch, whatever you need. This is a very common path. I think our latest number is something like 30 million concurrent servers actually managed by Systems Manager today. It's a pretty big number. But that's not the only way to do it. And we're not really going to demo it here today, but just know that if you have a solution right now for patching, maintaining, remotely accessing, and so on, your systems, you don't have to use Systems Manager to gain this capability. You can also use IAM roles anywhere, which is a fantastic certificate-based approach to authentication. And we'll show a little bit more about that in a future slide, but it will not actually be built into the demo. But the long and the short of it is you have 2 major options that both yield short-term credentials for secure access to the AWS API. And it's up to you which one is best for your needs. Okay, good. I think photos are done. If not, I can put up some slides at the very end, but we'll see. Also, very important, when you're using another cloud, some of you probably have requirements that are very specific around access to cloud services providers' environments through the internet. That might be that you're not allowed to use the internet, and that's okay. So you can absolutely use all of these same tools through a VPN or through a direct connect. The option is entirely yours. There's nothing here that dictates you go directly through the internet to our public endpoints to access Systems Manager or roles anywhere or anything that we're talking about here today. That was a lot. Okay. So here's some of the problems that we're going to solve for in the demo. The first is the context switching. If we're going to be using a smaller set of tools, in this case the AWS ones, unsurprisingly, then you can have a lower latency access to security data, faster incident management, et cetera. Now, when we acquired Northwind, we didn't get a nice inventory of what they had. So we didn't know. It was kind of a surprise for everybody. You know, surprise, here's a couple thousand servers of various states of disrepair. Having an inventory was pretty key. And that was nowhere more evident than in the patch management, or lack thereof. That was a little scary. Luckily, we have a solution for that here that we'll show. We also saw that there were some servers that they operated that were on the public internet, not DMZ'd, sure, but people were still directly RDPing and SSHing into them. Bad news, please, no one should ever do that again. We hate ClickOps, we're very automation driven, and we're going to show you one of the ways that we apply changes to our servers across our entire estate, whether they're on-prem, in Azure, in GCP, it doesn't matter. We can automate our way through almost anything. And with that, I'm going to roll into the demo. And no, the demo is not going to break on me. I'm confident. Whew, yay, it works. All right. There's a lot of material here to cover, but I'm going to start with right here on the AWS console. I've already got a quick view of which of my managed instances are actually compliant. And as you can see, it's not a great story. I've got a whole bunch of non-compliant servers. Please do as I say and not as I do. I actually leave my demo environments kind of broken on purpose, just because of, demos like this. Now, this is the Node Insights view. This is new. I think it launched on, may have been Sunday, so pretty fresh. But right from here, we have a summary of the 16 nodes that compose my environment. This is several in Azure, 1 or 2 in GCP. I've got 6 that are actually sitting in an on-prem environment. And I think I might have 3 or something. The math doesn't work, but you'll be very forgiving, though, of course. But we have a very convenient view of exactly what we have in this environment. And then if we dive right into what we're going to be doing next, I am going to find a video. I have chosen not to rely on the internet for showing things that I've done in other cloud providers today. I've actually recorded these. Usually I don't. Today I did. This is just to show that what we're doing is very real. This is me creating an Azure VM, not the most exciting thing you've ever seen in your life. I'm not inventing anything here in this particular view. But just know that this is the process that I actually took when I recorded this not too long ago. This was on Monday. And some of the other things I might have recorded as early as 2 hours ago. But away it went. Fantastic. And no, I do not type that fast. I did speed that up. Now, what happened was after I had created this VM on Azure, this is the process of adding it to Systems Manager. So the first thing I did here is I copied off its IP address, and then I SSH'd directly into it. You know, I said don't SSH into boxes over the internet. This is the one time I'm allowing myself to do it, because I don't have it added to SSM yet, so I can't manage it. Here, what I'm doing is I'm creating what's called a hybrid activation. And this is right there in the left-hand navigation side of the Systems Manager console. I give this a name. It's optional. You don't have to. This is going to create keys that are used to perform the activation on that remote node. Now, you can do this across hundreds of servers at a time if you want. And that's usually the way that we see customers do this. When they onboard Systems Manager, they can onboard them en masse. I'm going to pause this for a moment. You're going to see up here at the top, it's a little small, but that's OK. And don't worry, you can take a photograph of those. They're already expired. An activation code and an activation ID. These are used to perform the actual enrollment of a server inside of Systems Manager. There we go. So with those in place, and by the way, just as easy to do through the API, I usually don't even use the console. This is, pause right there. This is a quick and easy script that I used to run with those credentials pasted into it to install the agent and activate it. It's just like that. I didn't have to do anything more complicated. It's just the same exact process, by the way, if you're running PowerShell. Only, of course, it's not going to be a bash script, obviously. But with this all in place, I go ahead and I copy that off. I send it off into this virtual machine. Easy peasy. Apparently, I should have sped this video up just a little bit. Oh, it's awful. I could have done this slightly faster. There we go. And we run it, and away we go. At the end, we're going to see a new instance ID come out of that. There we go. It's installing. Fantastic. Sweet. All right, there we go. So we're at the end of the video. And as you can see on that very last line of output there, It has something that says mi-0bb, blah, 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 blah. That is the managed instance ID. mi equals managed instance. Very easy stuff. Now, with this in place, I can actually dash right over to that server. mi dash, was it 1bb? I don't remember. I just looked at it, I didn't even remember. That is okay. I'll just pick one at random. Oh, here we go. Woo! This is that machine that I added and activated, I think, on Monday. And from here, we can very easily see exactly what is in this box. And we can query inventory across the entire fleet of servers. So there's actually a customer that I'll talk about in a bit that has 100,000 servers in this in Systems Manager. It's pretty cool stuff. But if I want to see if this box has bash on it, it's a pretty trivial example. Awesome. Cool, it has bash. That's not really surprising. If you want to look for a version of a package installed on anything across your fleet, though, you can find it all through here. You can even browse the file system, which I think is pretty neat. You can download and upload files directly from here. This is not the most scalable approach, obviously. You can view performance counters in real time. So if you have a box that you know is dying, then why not use a tool like this to interact with it in real time? You can view process lists. You can even kill processes that are actually running on it. Again, trying to keep operators off of consoles and not going into your servers is the best approach here. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a minute to load, obviously. Fantastic. And like right from here, if I wanted to murder something, just like that, I can process the entire process, kill an entire process, pardon me. But there's more interesting things that we can do. I'm going to actually head over to patch this node. So from here, I can either have an entire patch baseline that's applied to various environments, such as UAT, prod, dev, test, etc. It's very straightforward for me to create that baseline and then have staged deployments of patches to each of these environments in turn, so that we don't have a bad day from a bad patch. Not that that's ever happened to anybody. But if we choose just to patch one machine at a time like this, again, not the most scalable solution, but one that you can absolutely do. I'm not going to store my logs. Then just as an example, you can patch it directly from here. So this will take a minute to run, and while it does, I'm going to move on to talk about remote access. So from here, I'm a big hater for SSHing across the internet. I don't think it's the best approach. I don't like people doing things like moving SSH to like a different port, just because I think it's going to give them some semblance of security. It really doesn't. You can finger port ports very easily. But from here, I'm already in this box, and I can do some things like, I'll run top. It's not very interesting. You see there's a lot of CPU usage right there. That's actually the Systems Manager agent right now running the patch activity on this particular machine. Now, I'm just running some very boring commands because I'm going to look for them in just a moment in the logs. So, very boring activity there. But let's have a look at what I've actually done. I've set this up to send all of the activity I just put into the console, all of the keystrokes. They've actually landed in a CloudWatch log group. So in this particular example, I have it set up with a KMS key as well. So it could be that you have very strong requirements to secure your access logs, all of your operator activity. I would certainly secure them myself. And in this case, let's have a look at one of these. Here we go. A little hard to read here, but this is the output of me running top on that server just a minute ago. It streams in real time if you so desire, or it can batch drop these into CloudWatch at the end of a session. But if you need to hunt across an entire stream of logs and see who has done what and where, or if you want to see every time somebody has typed sudo or something like that, probably a good one to look for, this is a method that you can use to do so. And we're going to come back to logs in just a little bit, although today it's not really much of a logs-focused session. By the way, at the end of the session, we're going to share a link for how to set this up with the KMS encryption, with logs, with session manager, all in one place. Just give me one moment. I actually have speaking notes over here, which I'm trying to run through, and I have to zoom in on them. Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to check on Patch Manager. Oh, still running. That's OK. It's not going anywhere. Well, actually, it should go somewhere, but we will come back to it. While this is in place, though, I want to show a little bit of the automation capabilities of Systems Manager. So if we look at all these nodes here, actually go back to the whole list of nodes that are available inside of my demo environment. Things that are Octank, Northwind, Contoso, a couple of things that don't have names. Most of these don't run inside of EC2. A bunch of them actually run under my desk in my office. Every single one of these, I can apply the same automation to very simply. And what I'm going to do is show you one of the documents that I use to get into these. Let's have a look at this. This is the flow for how I can run an arbitrary script against every machine in my fleet. And I was able to do this with the visual editor. Now, if we walk through this really quickly, what happens is I list all the instances in my Systems Manager account. I loop through them all. I list the platform for them. Is it Windows or is it Linux? Based on the results of that, it will either, in this case, do nothing, because I haven't defined a Windows action for today, or it's going to run a shell. In this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm actually looking to see if I have a file called barlog syslog. You know, you don't have it on every machine anymore because they keep changing the way syslog works. That's a little bit of a journal control jab there. And then at the end, I want to report on that. So I had options on how I wanted to do this. In this particular case, I'm just going to go and put a little bit of data inside of a DynamoDB table to show me which machines actually have this file. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it, and I'm going to show you what happens. First, I'm going to show you the DynamoDB table. Oop, there we go. What was that? There are no items in there. But I'm going to execute this automation. I'm going to say simple execution, just run it everywhere, my entire environment. Now, as it goes, it's going to asynchronously go through that entire flow on every machine that I have. And I'm just going to run this a couple of times. Well, we've already found 3. It's going to keep going up over time. This counter is going to keep going up as well. This is an idempotent way of executing. Essentially, it could be a directed acyclic graph across all the machines that you need. If you have compliance requirements, or if you need to even do something kind of silly, like I am right now, just checking for one file across your entire environment, then this is a way that you can do it. There we go. Anyway, I see some machines have that file and some don't. It's a pretty trivial example, but given the pretty much unlimited capabilities to automate your environment using this approach, I think it has a great deal of value. Now, just think if you were plugging in the output from this style of automation into something like the Jira API or maybe ServiceNow, or if you had other systems that needed to understand the content that comes out of such an approach, you're really not limited in any way. So with that, I think we're going to roll on to the next thing. All right. So let's see if we ticked all the boxes here. There's less context switching because I didn't have to go at any point and actually access another cloud provider console. We do have central inventory, which is pretty cool. I've done away with, oh, you know what? I didn't check on the patching. Is it done? Nah, it's not done. That's okay. I'll come back to that when we go to the next demo. We've done away with the remote access directly into the boxes through the internet. When you use Session Manager with Systems Manager, the way that it actually functions, I didn't say this earlier, is the agent opens up a WebSocket to the Systems Manager API. That WebSocket is then used to initiate that session from our service side into that machine. So at no point does that machine and your laptop ever have a direct connection with each other. It is all managed through that WebSocket, through the managed service. We can do away with the ClickOps. I can execute this automation just from the command line. And by doing so, we should have much more repeatable automation. And by the way, you can actually use Systems Manager to execute Ansible scripts as well. If any of you are good Ansible shops right now, it's a pretty convenient way to scale that out even further. All right, so let's move on to observability. I had earlier mentioned roles anywhere. Same rules apply. You can use the Systems Manager agent as a way of obtaining those short-lived credentials for your services, or you can use IAM roles anywhere. And the choice is entirely yours, obviously. But let's see a little bit about how this can be pulled together within Octank. So Octank has this nice EC2 environment where we've got some EKS nodes, we've got some servers. It's pretty standard fare. The way that you would typically inside of AWS grab observability data and then put it into CloudWatch or Prometheus would be like this. So first, you're going to have your agent inside of the machine. In this particular case, I'm picking on OpenTelemetry. It's going to talk to the secure token service through the instance metadata service that's inside of all the EC2 instances. It's going to retrieve a role and credentials, and then use those credentials for every API call into the rest of our observability platform. Now, this is being done pretty commonly by everybody here. However, what if you want to do something really crazy and run, say, an AKS cluster over in Azure and have the same sort of data be delivered into Prometheus or into CloudWatch? And in this case, what if it's a node that's managed by AKS and you wouldn't have an easy way to get the Systems Manager agent in there? Good news, you can use roles anywhere. It's not a problem. The authentication chain is a little bit different though. So the way it's going to work is with Prometheus. I'm picking on Prometheus and the Prometheus projects a lot today because they're very popular. Prometheus is going to speak to a credential helper process that is a part of roles anywhere. That credential helper presents a certificate to the roles anywhere service inside of AWS. Now, in this particular case, I've used our own private certificate authority service to sign that certificate. You don't have to use our CA, though. You can use your own if you wish. Now, that in turn, if it is successfully validated, the certificate that you presented, it's going to result in the AWS Secure Token Service issuing credentials, which of course are mapped to a role that you have created for this purpose. The credentials then get returned off to the credential helper, and then you can push data directly from this AKS environment right into AWS Observability Services. So a few more steps, but you set it up once, and of course it's done. Now, the problems that Octank wanted to solve for this particular case, cross-line of business dashboards. It's a little bit of an issue. What do you have on the Northwind side versus what do you have on the Octank side? And can I get a union of this data that is on two different cloud providers, all using one set of tools? Also, operational metrics, exposing some of those to our business leaders, it was a bit of a challenge. What if there's a way that we can expose that to them without saying, oh, here's your AWS credentials, go log in and have fun? That's a bad scene. I don't want to say that to an exec. And we, of course, have a mix of metrics from CloudWatch and Prometheus, and Azure Monitor in this case. It's a lot to manage. And finally, Kubernetes exists everywhere. On-prem, Azure, AWS? And what if I want to have central alerts from what's taking place from all of these different places? So with that, back to the demo we go. Oh, look at that, the patching worked. Yay. Fantastic. So I'm going to head over to CloudWatch next. I'm going to land on dashboards first. And I'm going to bounce back and forth between this dashboard screen and some of the other components of CloudWatch quite a bit, but just to whet your appetite for a moment. What do we see here? AKS core is available, AKS pods in ready state. We see what looks like some Prometheus data. We're gonna go through each of these in turn. But the first thing that I want to cover before we proceed are two services that are going to be key for those distributed environments. I'm not going to do a deep dive on Internet Monitor today. This is just to whet your appetite. But know that you do have a service available from AWS that lets you do a union of what we call Internet weather. If you have a workload that has direct access coming into AWS, or the best way to describe it actually is we have the ability to see when there are providers that have operational issues around the world, such as we have seen here, where British Telco had an issue. There's an issue with this provider in Hyderabad. We can actually produce a union of those issues with observed traffic based on their source IP addresses and the VPCs that you operate your workloads in. Just know that that is the sort of thing that we can provide inside of CloudWatch and give you more visibility into when you actually have an operational impact. But a little bit more on point for this discussion, though, is synthetic monitors. Now here, what I have is a VPN connection that goes from the Octank AWS environment into the Northwind Azure environment. And through this VPN, I can measure things like round trip time. Each of these probes you see down below, they actually initiate from inside of a specific availability zone. So we can see if there's an impact from one availability zone to one target over in another environment. So this works equally well with Azure as it does with an on-premises environment. It can go through VPNs completely well. Now, going back to the dashboard here, let's actually have a look at one of these metrics. All right, so this is the number of pods that are in a ready state. Now, if we have a look at the query that actually produced this, you're going to see this doesn't look like anything you might have seen before from inside of CloudWatch when you're browsing for metrics. That looks suspiciously like an Azure subscription, and it is. So first I'm going to show you how you set this up, and then I'm going to show you how easy it is just to query this in place through here. If we head down to Settings, and then on the Metric Data Sources view, you see I have an Azure data source, another data source I call reInvent. That's actually just a Prometheus instance, but we'll cover that in a minute. If you want to link your CloudWatch metrics to Azure Monitor, all I need to do is head to add a new data source. You can see we have a whole number of them that are available, plus you can even create your own if you wish. Azure Monitor. There you go. All you need to do is pop in your tenant and your secrets, and you're off to the races. The credentials for this are stored in AWS Secrets Manager. So you can rotate these out of band whenever you need to. I'm not actually going to go through all that right now because it'll take just a minute longer. But instead, I am going to head back to, go back over here. I'm going to go back to the metrics view. And we're going to do a different query. Let's clear the graph. Let's talk to Azure. At the moment, I only have one subscription in here. I used to have a whole lot more. Let's talk to the demo resource group. Sure, there's a virtual machine, why not? There, metric, CPU, the most boring metric of all. Average, away we go. Oh, and let's also change the view because that probably shouldn't be showing up as a gauge. Perfect. Also perfectly boring because there's really nothing at all interesting happening on that server, which is a pity because it makes for not the most exciting demo. But just like that, I am able to pull metric data directly out of Azure Monitor. Under the hood, this runs as a Lambda that is deployed using CloudFormation, but it's all scaffolded using the CloudWatch console. So it's very simple and straightforward for you to implement on your own. Now, a little bit more about those pods. I'm going to go play one more quick demo. It's going to show a little bit about how I'm fetching data from AKS and then pushing it into Amazon Web Services. Now, the activity here, this is just me opening up the usual AKS console. As you're going to see here, there's absolutely nothing exciting going on. There's just 2 nodes in here. It's purely for demonstration purposes. I'm going to open up Cloud Shell, and from there, we're going to have a very easy view of what's happening inside of this cluster using kubectl. Some people call it kubectl. I like to call it kubectl. I think that goes along with my cephalopod theme. So this is me putting in the credentials inside of the Cloud Shell environment. List my nodes, make sure they're actually there. Fantastic, life is good. So this is going to look a little squirrely on the screen, but it's okay, it all makes sense. I'll walk you through it. This is me trying to look at, there we go, the configuration for Prometheus running inside of this cluster. And the thing I want to highlight, and I'll actually highlight it here in the video actually. There we go. Is that remote write URL. That URL is actually an Amazon managed Prometheus endpoint. So I don't have the CloudWatch agent installed in this cluster. I don't have the systems manager agent installed, but I'm still able to push data directly into Prometheus using this approach. It's just a Helm install Prometheus server, easy stuff. But let's head back to that dashboard for a moment, because if you have a look at this data, that's what's coming into here. So this is load data coming from a Helm installed Prometheus node server running off in AKS. Once it's in CloudWatch, I can create alarms using CloudWatch alarms just like I could anything else that's running inside of AWS. There's absolutely no difference at that point. But there's some other interesting things happening in here that I would like to highlight really quickly. We do have the VPN data that's being monitored. That's actually probably not the most exciting part. But what about if I wanted to do something really interesting, like move from Prometheus over to CloudWatch? Depending on your needs, it might make sense to do so. It's definitely a thing that needs to be evaluated. For this, I'm going to head back to our friendly systems manager. And we're going to have a look at a box that I call monitor. There we go. This is a Debian box, apparently. I'm going to do this all as root. Please do as I say, not as I do. So the CloudWatch agent is running on this particular server. And I use this as a collector with, well, let me rephrase. I was using it as a collector with Prometheus on it to scrape this entire environment. Now let's have a look at a Prometheus configuration for a moment. And that looks pretty standard fare. It's Prometheus-y. You know, I have some relabels taking place. I'm being pretty selective with the data that I'm sending. But there's no remote write URL present in here. So what would I be doing with this data? And the answer for that is pretty interesting. If I head over to CloudWatch, if I go back to metrics, clear the graph, back to browse. I have this namespace here within metrics for a whole bunch of server names that look suspiciously like the one that we were just looking at. So Ubuntu 2024, Firewall, Fedora. Let's actually filter this down a little bit, shall we? There we go. Now there's 5 servers. We head back to Systems Manager. It's the same 5 servers. This is the magic of what's happening. So we have a look and see if Prometheus is running. The answer is it is not. Oops. Helpful if I actually finish typing the sentence. Awesome. But what we're doing is we've embedded Prometheus inside of the CloudWatch agent. That config that I was just showing you, I'll pull that back up. There we go. It's taking the scraped data from these endpoints, and it's emitting it directly into CloudWatch, and it's being added to that custom namespace for custom metrics inside of CloudWatch. And once it's there, I can treat it just like any other metric. I can create alarms. I can use anomaly detection with it. Everything is fair game. Now, the way that we emit this data is pretty cool. I'm going to show that really quickly, and then we'll, I think, be just about done with most of the demos. Over in CloudWatch, the way that we send this data is using a format called embedded metric format. And it's actually using logs as a transport. So we'll just expand 1 or 2 of these. Does anybody here actually know embedded metric format, EMF? I don't see any hands. Cool. This is actually a really fantastic capability of CloudWatch. When you send properly structured data into CloudWatch, it can automatically extract metrics for you and put them in the right place. So in this particular case, I've got some metric data, which is zeros, not super exciting. But it's being added into metrics through this log-based format. You can do this in your applications as well. If your applications are set up to write EMF, then so long as it lands in CloudWatch logs, you can have it create application-level metrics for you very easily. And I usually like to talk about how powerful this could be if you wanted to have every purchase on your website, every financial transaction, every time a video is watched. That is a metric data point. You should always think about having your business workload data unified with your operational metric data so you can do correlations. Now, I've done a lot of stuff here with CloudWatch, but we aren't entirely limited just to CloudWatch. What if I was to, let's actually go to the dashboards one more time. Let's get this infrastructure dashboard. I'm going to drag it over here. So we've got load average. We've got things over, say, a 3-hour period. It's probably a little bit better. Pretty cool stuff. And we've got data coming in from Prometheus. We've got it coming in from Azure. It's all very good. But what about if I want to expose this data to a non-technical audience? Very typically, customers will use tools like Grafana to do this. And that's exactly what I've done. So here, I've actually recreated the same exact dashboard in Grafana with the same exact data sources. In fact, I can flip back and forth between them. And you can even see that it's the same data. Although I should have scrolled down a little bit to make that really look good, but that's OK. If you want to expose this sort of data to a non-technical audience, Grafana means they don't have to go into the AWS console. And by the way, this is the AWS managed Grafana. However, you could do this with open source Grafana just as well. And like I've said, you should be thinking beyond just infrastructure metrics. You should be thinking about unifying that data-based view. So you can do the same exact approach. You can have cross-line of business metrics. So here I say CSR is on duty. There's actually a lot on duty right now. Email bounce rate, collated sales across Octank, Northwind, combined all the way over into one view. This is actually these two stocked on top. And I can do that with the same exact approach using the CloudWatch console. I highly recommend exposing operational metrics to your business using this approach. It is extremely useful. You've probably been seeing people bend over all day to switch the monitors around. So here we go. I think we've got some cross-line of business dashboards. We have data coming in from 3 different environments, and they're all collated together, and they're easily viewed all in one place. We've got some Kubernetes action happening, and I think we're making pretty good progress here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we got our single pane of glass, single glass of pain. I don't know, it's been called both.
Awesome. All right, so speaking of single pane of glass, I think we can probably call that one of the results.
Yep. We have one for Systems Manager and one for Observability. So that's super helpful for the business side.
There are less headaches because there's less tools. A little bit of tool consolidation is very often a good thing. I like to think we're doing so in a way that is reducing friction and is helping people move faster, be able to automate a lot more.
Yeah, definitely saves money, improves our cloud posture security management.
Yep, and we don't have people SSHing into boxes anymore, at least not directly. Please never do that.
Ah, yes. Cloud native open source managed services. No need to have more servers to manage other servers.
Yes, we don't like servers to manage servers. And last but not least, we have more calamari.
You can't eat Octi.
I can absolutely eat Octi. He is delicious.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's talk about some real customer results. So last year I was actually on stage at reInvent, we both were, with Philips 66. And their number for the operational improvements by using Amazon Managed Grafana and Amazon Managed Prometheus was a 30% reduction in mean time to resolution, which was a shocking number, actually.
And their persona-based dashboards were insane.
Oh, yeah. And they actually, they operate more than 5,000 servers using this approach, largely but not entirely Kubernetes-based. It's really fantastic. We actually have a video recorded of that if you want to go find it. And then I had mentioned before that Rackspace manages more than 100,000 servers using Systems Manager, which again is very, very cool. And we do have some links we're going to share in just a moment that talks about some of these use cases. We have some rather eye-watering numbers from the use of these services. CloudWatch, 11 quadrillion metric observations per month. I can't even imagine that number. Systems Manager, again, 30 million concurrent instances managed each week. Now, before we put up links, there's 4 links, 2 of which are blog posts that talk about how to set up some of what we've shown today. And then the other 2 aren't blog posts, but they'll still give you more information.
And before you leave, please, can we ask that you open the reInvent app and just give us your feedback? Was the session helpful? Did you get good information? If you feel that it wasn't and you're going to give bad reviews, you don't have to do what I just asked.
People are going to give good reviews, you know. We have a kind audience. Our Octank people are very, very smart and intelligent. They know good things when they see it.
Okay. All right. Here you have the links. You can find our hybrid and multi-cloud webpage that has a lot of this information. We also include a link to our blogs. If you need help, any issues with multi-cloud that you'd like to solve with your multi-cloud environment, if you need strategic support, best practices, technical information, if there's anything that our team can do to help you, talk to your account manager. They know where to find us.
And here we have 2 links. I can put these back up in a second, by the way, if people didn't get those. Here we have 2 links. One goes to how to set up the KMS encryption for Sessions Manager with CloudWatch logs. Highly, highly, highly recommended. I would absolutely consider that a best practice. And the second link there is how to observe your AWS and Azure workloads all in one place. That goes into a deeper description of how to set up the Azure Monitor configuration with CloudWatch, and also has some debugging tips if you run into some issues. The short answer is it's usually because the tokens get inverted, but it's an easy thing to fix. So we are 4 minutes early, which is great. It means we can take a couple of questions if people have them. We don't have a microphone wandering around, though, so if you have any questions, you're going to have to speak up, please.
And we'll repeat them for the recording.
That's right. And I still can't see people because the lights are super bright.
Any questions? You answered everything in advance.
That's good.
Well, if you'd like to talk to us, we're going to be outside right after the session. If you try any of what you learned here today, and if it goes well or not, and you need help, find us on LinkedIn. I'm Ellie. This is Rich. And thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.